This is a little bonus video in response to some of your questions about how to feel into the subtle core of the body for the purposes of, all of the different ways in which we use the subtle core of the body within the realization process, or we could say that the primary ways in which we use the subtle core of the body. Okay, and specifically as it relates to both attunement to fundamental consciousness and, let's say, releasing of trauma-based holding patterns. So, and this is going to be a brief presentation, but we're going to go through some main pointers here. Okay. So the first thing to realize, or to not do, okay, when we're feeling into the subtle core of the body is this. We have a habit of looking down into ourselves like that. So it's like sometimes when the pointer is, find the center of your pelvis, for instance, what we'll do is we'll kind of look in at our experience. And it's almost like we're looking down upon ourselves. And so the way to do that is more integrated, and where we're present through the internal space of the body versus being aware of the body from like a top-down point of view, is to first find, which means by find, we're talking about opening, like resting back into and opening our feeling sense within the center of the head, okay? And so how do we do that if we've never done any subtle core work before, like if we were to just talk about it from square one? So one thing is to feel the internal space of the body itself as a kind of the texture of life, of aliveness, of presence that we can feel through the body. And we're feeling that as if it's the ocean, right? As if within the boundaries of our skin, there's this ocean of sensation, this ocean of life, of being, of presence. And we're not aware of that presence, but we're aware as that presence. That's the difference, okay? And so to be aware as that presence, to inhabit our body and to feel like we're living as the internal space of our body, what we're doing is we can start by just feeling that ocean that lives in the internal space of the body as one continuous texture. We're just tuning into the textural dimension of our being, the texture that we feel through interoception, or our inner body sensations, right? Another pointer that we can use to feel that texture is to rest through the internal space of the body like we're resting into the back of a chair. And what this will do is a lot of times our sense of focus is upwardly displaced and forward displaced. We're kind of projected up and out of ourselves a little bit. That will give some balance to that, right? If we rest towards the back of our body as if the back of our body was the back of a chair, it gives us a sense of containment. It allows us to rest through the internal space of the body. It allows us to rest with gravity. We can feel our feet on the floor. We can feel our seat in the chair. We can feel our presence resting against the back of our skull, the back of our neck, the shoulders, the backs of our arms and legs. And that can really settle us into this deeper textural level of life and being that we feel through the internal space of the body. Okay, so that's really, you could say, a step one. If we've never done any subtle core work before, that's really step one. You could say is resting through the internal space of the body, pivoting from awareness of to presence as, or life as, living as the internal space of our body. Okay, so a deeper level of that experience, or we could say the deepest perspective from which we can be present through the body, is the subtle core of the body. The subtle core of the body in the realization process is, you could say, we can find this by finding a sense of balance, okay? So that's one of the key feeling senses that are part of the subtle core, is the sense of balance. And what that means is that we can, once we get this sense of feeling present through the internal space of our body, we can start by finding the center of the head. And the way that we do that is, one pointer is at roughly the depth of the centers of the ears, we can kind of gently rest our focus back there, as if there were a line drawn through between the centers of the ears, and we're balancing our focus on that line. We're just resting back into the middle of that line, and then you can dissolve the line and just feel what that space is like. Okay. You can play around with adjusting your focus forward, adjusting it back a little bit, and adjusting it left, adjusting it right, adjusting it up, adjusting it down, and until you land on a place that really feels balanced, and it feels like it's steady, it's stable, like you're kind of it's just a nice place to rest. And the sense of balance, right, between front, back, left, and right, we do not have, here's an important point, we do not have to contract our focus to feel that balance. In fact, the sense of balance itself is an uncontracted experience of being, okay? It's an uncontracted experience of being. What that means is that there's an open stillness, a spaciousness that we feel as we rest into the core. And we can find that in each of the core points. We can feel that in the subtle core itself. We can even feel that sense of balance as a kind of, a sense, the plane that's poised between left and right. We can feel that balance in the plane that's poised between back and front through the body. And we can feel it in the space that's poised between the felt sense of back and front and the felt sense of left and right, which is the subtle core itself, okay? Now, in the realization process, the subtle core is viewed in a few different ways. Number one, you could think of it as a channel through which a very subtle, slender current of energy runs from below the base of the torso through to the top of the head. You could think of it as, a central meridian of energy that other meridians kind of hook into, the meridians in our arms and our legs, and other energy channels in the body. Okay. Another way that you can think about it is as an entry point to fundamental consciousness itself. And what does that mean? That means that you can do this through any point along the core. And the points that I've drawn here are some of the major points that we use in the realization process, as well as some of the major chakra points: base chakra, pelvic center. In the Hindu system, there's another chakra here, the sacral chakra, and there's the navel chakra, which is right about here. And there's the solar plexus one here, which I have drawn. There's the heart chakra here. In some systems, there's a higher heart chakra, which is about up here at the suprasternal notch. There's the throat chakra, the center of the head. Some systems have the third eye chakra, which is about between the eyebrows here. The realization process uses the center of the forehead one, which is about here. And the crown chakra, there's another chakra above that, and a chakra roughly 10 inches above the top of the head. Okay, but the point is, we can feel that resonance of the subtle core within any of these core points or chakra points. And you could say that the lower chakras we can feel, or in the lower part of the subtle core, also the lower segments of the body, we can feel a more textural dimension. We can feel our physical presence and foundation, power, gender, sexuality. Those types of qualities are there, okay? And although we can also feel those qualities through the whole body, just to make it more confusing, right? So we can also feel, we can feel love and emotional qualities through our heart and midsection, and we can feel our more mental qualities of being, voice, we could say, is a mixture of both. You could say that there's a quality of power that lives in our quality of voice. It's really our sense of expression. So it has emotional qualities and mental qualities. And our quality of understanding we can feel here. There's also this dimension of awareness that's part of fundamental consciousness that we can access through the internal space of our head and above the top of our head. Okay, so the point here is that the subtle core itself is a kind of unification of all these qualities. It's where we can feel a continuity of sensing, feeling, knowing. And if we were in a Buddhist paradigm, we might say that this is one type of experience of one taste. We experience our whole field of being as just one taste, sensing, feeling, knowing. And so that when we get back far enough in the core of the body, where we can really feel that whole balance space as a continuity from the base of the torso, through our midsection, through the chest, through the top of the head, when we can feel all of that as a continuity, it also brings us into a deeper experience of life and being, where there's no longer this bifurcation of where our sensations are not cut off from our emotions, and our emotions are not cut off from our thinking mind, right? There's a continuity of sensing, feeling, or emotion, and knowing, thinking, perception, awareness. Okay, I hope all that makes sense so far. Now, the subtle core, you could say one of the aspects of it is that we can feel this, again, this balance space. The quality of balance is it's uncontracted, and uncontracted in a way where the dimension of uncontracted stillness that we can get by resting into the core is already there. It's, you could say, it's a kind of grace. It's a kind of unefforted, unimagined, deeper, more subtle level of being. It's subtler than any of the aspects, even though we can feel that energy moving through the core. There's also this aspect of the core of our being, the core of the body, that is unmoving, unchanging. It's a gateway into this unmoving, unwounded dimension of our being. Okay, and so one of the ways that we can do this, that we can feel into fundamental consciousness, which is it's the stillness that we feel in the core of our body that is simultaneously realized as the stillness that pervades our whole field of experience, is like this. And you can do this really through any core point. You can rest into the internal space of your body, you can rest into your core, finding the center of your head, and then you can feel, you can attune to awareness that's part of the uncontracted stillness that you feel in the core. And then you can start to feel that that awareness is deeper. It's deeper and texturally more subtle, meaning that it's finer, right? There's a refined quality to it, that it doesn't move with any of the perceptions that move, nor does it move with any movements of focus, right? There's a part of our mind that moves, that focuses, that we can move our attention to different places, including we can move our, we can direct our attention to the internal space of the body or outside of our body, which is our sense of interoception and our sense of exteroception. Now, these are senses, right? And shifts of focus, sensations that arise to the senses, these are all movements in the mind-body system. Fundamental consciousness is deeper and more subtle than any of these specific movements. The movements of energy and life and being move through fundamental consciousness, but don't disturb it, okay? So we can feel this stillness in the core as awareness, and we can feel that awareness as this uncontracted dimension that's actually subtler than the felt sense of either inside or outside. And because it's subtler than both of them, as an aspect of consciousness, because our field of experience itself is made of consciousness, right? It arises in consciousness. We can experience that consciousness as pervading the whole field of experience. And this has been given analogies like light, like maybe, and it feels like light, it can feel like light. What else? What other analogies? Space, a kind of silence that pervades everything. These are kind of the qualities usually linked to awareness. There's also, even though it's not a specific emotion per se, there is a kind of uncontracted, unmoving, steady state emotion that we can open to from the heart. We can also feel this emotion or this emotional dimension everywhere. It's part of fundamental consciousness, this kind of, you'd say, warmth, acceptance, a kind of innate supportiveness, a sense of grace, bliss that can emerge. And this all feels like it's a very subtle, fine aspect of the field itself, or of the space of fundamental consciousness. Okay, and so we can open, once we find the uncontracted quality of being, or of stillness, this kind of perfect balance that we can feel in the heart center, that perfect balance, when we rest into it, it's realized as something that pervades our whole field of experience. It's part of, again, because the field of experience arises in consciousness, the quality of love, or this kind of fundamental emotional tone that's part of fundamental consciousness is also part of it. We experience the emotional dimension of fundamental consciousness as love or bliss, or this kind of refined supportiveness that's just there, fundamental well-being, and that those are all parts of the tone of emotion in fundamental consciousness. Not an emotion that moves, right? So one clue here is that if we find a kind of steadiness in the emotional quality that we can feel in our heart center, or through just the middle segment of the core of the body, if we can feel that kind of steady state emotional tone that feels perfectly balanced and even and perfectly supportive and accepting, right? We can just continue to rest into that, and it just sort of, it's revealed. It's something that's revealed as something that's already there in the background that also pervades our field of experience. And so this last one here, or in the realization process, the different aspects of fundamental consciousness are divided into awareness, emotion, sensation. And these are just different ways of feeling the field, but really it's all one thing, right? There's one fundamental consciousness is one thing, or one field, space, ground, whatever analogy you want to use. It's one thing. And there's an awareness quality to it. There's an emotional quality to it. There's a textural quality to it. The textural quality means, so like what textures do we feel moving through the body? Subtle energy currents, physical sensations, our blood moving, other subtle sensations that we have that move. And this is a texture that feels uncontracted. And you could say it's the texture of liveliness that's part of the stillness, or a kind of smooth velvetyness. It's almost like something that's smoother than champagne. It's something like that. But it's an uncontracted feeling tone of, this pregnant stillness that is everywhere. Okay. So that is the domain of physical, when Judith is talking about our dimension of physical sensation, or our ground of physical sensation, that's what it is. So it's just the textural feeling of the stillness, of the unconditional love. It's just the textural dimension of that same experience. Okay. And again, it's an uncontracted texture. It's the fundamental sense of sensation, or the sensation of existence through which everything else moves. So I hope that's helpful as like a way of talking about the subtle core and its different capacities. And once we can enter into that dimension of fundamental consciousness through the core of the body, then it really gives us a solid grounding, because part of what we know through fundamental consciousness is the deep sense that everything is, deep down, all is well. That, depending on your spiritual paradigm, it's, this can give us an insight that, the light seems to hold up the darkness of the world, or at least the darkness of our experience, that we can feel a sense of all is well, everything is okay. We can feel a sense of, perfect safety in the deep core of the body and through our whole field of experience when we rest into it. So all of these things are very, very potent, direct knowing types of experiences that can disconfirm presumptions about, low self-worth, that can, heal a sense of vulnerability and rawness to intense emotions. And that's probably, evident to a lot of folks already out there who are watching this. So anyway, I hope this little guide to the subtle core as a gateway into fundamental consciousness and a deeper level of resourcing the body has been helpful. And if you have any further questions, feel free to email me. Okay, thanks everyone. Take care.